6th or 7th grade at Mayhem. It was the Boys and Girls Club. We would go there on Friday nights.
I met Paul my freshman year of high school. It was one day at track practice over spring break. He and Peter had just moved to the school and got to talking and realized that we were actually in the same first grade class. It was this really weird connection, but after that, things just sort of fell into place.
I met Paul through Facebook because I wanted to go to the same party someone else was going to. And ever since then, we became best friends.
We met through a mutual friend who was like, oh my god, you guys have to meet each other, you're gonna be the best of friends. And turns out she was right.
One of my really good friends, Rachel, was dating Paul's older brother, Peter, and they both really felt that we would get along really well. We both loved Hannah Montana. We both enjoyed sarcastic sense of humor. We both loved McDonald's, and they really thought we would hit it off right away. So they introduced us, and they were right, and we were friends up until he passed away.
I met Paul one Friday night at Mayhem with his best friend Jake. He went around asking all the girls for money.
He was crazy. He was so happy and optimistic and just an infectious person to be around because everyone was so drawn to him. He had this energy about him. He was so much fun. We were always laughing. He never got mad, ever. And if he did, it was hilarious. And he was just awesome. Really, really awesome.
He was the type of person that was never scared of anything. He never backed down from the challenge. There really was never a dull moment with Paul.
The same word I would describe after his diagnosis. He's awesome. He was awesome through it, he was awesome before it, he was awesome after it. He's always going to be the awesome person that I knew.
He was an awesome person and always knew how to cheer you up the right way if you were having a bad day.
In May of 2011, we were really, really close. It was probably the closest Paul and I have ever been.
He was so full of life and had so much more that he wanted to do. Most of his dreams were extravagant and totally out of this world, but for Paul, that was what made them worth dreaming about.
I only knew Paul about a year before he got diagnosed. Every time I was with Paul, I felt like it was a free comedy show. He was always a lot of fun. I felt he was so kind. He had a fantastic sense of humor. I felt like he was a light around anybody he was around.
After the diagnosis, I think he was still optimistic, and I still think he was like happy, but he just saw things differently. Like everything turned black and white, you know, like reality just hit him in the face. I don't think he was sad in any way, or you know, he was just that little tiny slight difference where it was things were a little bit different.
I remember I got to see him shortly after his diagnosis. He had a biopsy done and had come out of the operation and was in intensive care. And he was still kind of relearning how to some of those motor functions. And as I was leaving, I was saying goodbye, and I don't know what I was expecting from him, but he just picks his head up and says deuces, and that was it. But you knew that was Paul, and that was totally his type of personality, and you could just see it shining through in everything he did, and it was, I knew from then on that there was nothing that was going to take that away from him.
I don't think he changed socially. The times he could talk, he would talk, and the times he couldn't, he would just sit there and listen and nod his head. He would always understand.
He definitely was like a little less outgoing, but he was still like Paul. He was still, you know, smiley, happy, thought he was the shit.
I spent not as much time with Paul after he was initially diagnosed as he was getting used to dealing with such a disease, but he never played the victim. He never was like, woe is me, why did I get brain cancer? None of that. I always felt he handled it with such a sense of gratitude. He wanted to lift other people up. He was always positive. He was never negative. He never talked about it unless you brought it up. And every time I saw him, he had a new joke or a new place to eat. He never wanted to talk about his disease.
Paul never let anything bring him down. He always had a smile on his face. With the worst news, he never let it bring him down.
He was still like outgoing and he still liked to have his friends and stuff. But I do think he was a tiny bit more serious about things. Like some things he might have saw as a joke before like weren't funny anymore to him.
Kind of hard to describe him. He had his good days and his bad days, but he always seemed to try to make a smile. He had a smile on his face as much as he could.
Even though he lost some functions, you could still feel Paul's personality through his family and friends because everybody was there to support him with that.
I think if Paul changed, it was really minimal. I think he only changed maybe being more cautious of what he did and what he didn't do just because he was so sick. I think when we were around new people, he was a little more quiet, a little more shy, maybe because he didn't want to be judged because it was apparent he had a disease, and he didn't want any sympathy.
I wouldn't say Paul himself changed, but more so that his friends changed. He saw things a little bit differently. And, you know, of course, like socially, like he would get a little bit tired, so he wouldn't be out as much as he used to be. I mean, you could just kind of feel like his struggle a little bit. You could just tell he was in pain, and that was really hard. I would go and visit him in like the hospital and stuff. Like his eyes were still like the same, you know, like I feel like that's the way he would like answer. And in his last year was you kind of had to just like really look at him because you could like see his heart and soul in his eyes.
Paul's last year was really a roller coaster. It seemed like every day was sort of a new battle. He was fighting harder than ever, but it was definitely hard to watch.
As cancer took over, you know, you lose the ability for him to walk, to speak, to move his hands, to eat normal, to, you know, you lose all those basic functions that you take for granted every day, but you also lose the ability to talk to him and to, you know, interact with him on a friend level.
He was more grateful to have time with his friends and his family. I think we had more fun towards his last months before he became super ill as opposed to any other time because he knew he only had a short amount of time here, and I don't think there was any strain on our relationship at all.
I would say that it wasn't a strain, but our relationship went from like more than friends to we couldn't really be boyfriend and girlfriend. It was more that he needed a friend. I think the bigger social factor was that everybody else's lives were still moving forward, but Paul is stuck in the same place for so long. You know, he got cancer right when everyone graduated high school. school, so that's when everyone starts going to college and having to work and do other things. So I feel like if there was a strain, it would have been on my end, not on his end. Like, I should have been going out to see him more, not vice versa or anything like that, like I still went and saw him, when I could, and I feel like I felt a little guilty about that, like I should have done a little bit more.
The hardest part for me was that I don't think I was able to be there as much as I wanted to. Shortly after his diagnosis, we both graduated from high school, and I went off to college. And now at first it wasn't so bad because Paul was a bit of a social media diva, and so he was always easy to keep in contact with. But he's also the type of person that never really wanted to inconvenience anyone, so over the years he would never complain about anything. It was just kind of a shock because I wasn't totally up to date on where he was at, so sometimes he'd be doing a lot better and other times he'd be doing worse. And I think that was what made it hard for me. I think that's the one thing I'll always wish, is that I had spent some more time with him and made more trips to come down and see him kind of in between things.
I think Paul started to slow down and realize that his disease was terminal, that he wanted to make the best of the time he had left. My favorite memory I have with Paul was I had knee surgery a couple weeks after he got discharged from the hospital, after he had those tubes placed in his head. And I remember there was a knock on my door and I was like, why is anyone visiting me? I just had knee surgery, who is this? And then my mom's like, Paul's here to see you. And I was like, why is Paul here? And Paul came in and he had Hannah Montana videos in his hand, McDonald's, and I was like, what are you doing here? And he's like, well, you had knee surgery and I wanted to come spend time with you because nobody should go through surgery alone. But I think it was in that moment that I realized this is the kind of person everyone should have in their life. And I knew I was going to be friends with Paul forever, whether he was here physically or not.
He really was an inspiring friend to have, and I think that's what I think will stick with me through all of this. It's just how great of a person he was, and kind of pushes me to be everything that he wanted to be.
He was the first friend I told that I was having a baby. I know he couldn't tell anybody, but still, he was the first person I told, so he was still one of my best friends.
If anything, it brought us closer. I wouldn't change anything, the hospital visits, that going down there as much as I could. If anything, I would go back and do it again.
Paul is just the type of person that you just never forget. He had more friends than anyone I have ever known, yet somehow he always knew how to make every one of them feel special in their own way.
When these kind of things happen, especially to such good people, of course it changes you, but almost in a sense where it questioned my belief system. It comes to a point where you're like, if there's a God, why would he do this to such a good person?
The silly cliche way in that life is short, but it also makes me think about Paul every single day. Kind of opened me up to different ways of how I think about things. Makes you wonder how so many kids are going through this, and how Paul's really special, but how many people feel that way about their kids, and how we've been able to find so many cures for things, but how we can't find a cure for things that really touch people the way Paul touched us, and how we can't find a way to help those people we wanted to find a way to help Paul.
It changed me. It made me look at cancer a different way, and how Dearly, I hold my friendship towards people.
Paul would agree. I was really religious before Paul passed away, and when Paul passed away, I don't think I would consider myself religious anymore, because I questioned why something had happened to someone as young and as great as Paul.
If I had to describe all this in one word, I would think I would say I'm blessed. I'm blessed to have known Paul and blessed to have had him in my life. Like I said, he truly was an inspiring person.
Terrible. Wouldn't wish this upon anyone.
Devastating.
No one thinks of it until it's pushed right in your face. And I feel like that's one of those times where it was just really like right there, where it was like something could happen to you at any time.